Okay, great. Yeah, please take a seat. I have the honor of moderating the panel, asking some questions. But before we go into that, I think it's best if each of you do an introduction, explain a little bit also about what is your role in the company, what kind of company is it? As we're talking about life ops, I think for the audience it's always interesting to immediately also get a perspective like, okay, what are the games that are you're running in as life ops? How big is a life ops team? These kind of things. So maybe Mihai, you can start.
Sure. Hi, my name is Mihai Sfrijan. Quite complicated. Sorry about that. Not my fault. I'm the head of studios at Amber. We do a bunch of stuff, and one of our studios handles live ops. We are in that studio about 20 to 25 people, and we usually run 2 to 3 live ops projects in parallel. They can be both casual and mid-core.
Yeah, this is the pleasure of pronouncing names.
Yeah,
so
great,
hi, my name is Sonja Engesleva. So I work for Zynga as product lead. Zynga is a large company, so we have about 30 live games. And depending on the team, the live ops team actually varies as the team can, well, team actually has quite a lot of impact on the size of the team, plus as we are a large company, so we have the benefit of also having central operations, so basically different teams helping out with different campaigns, analytics, segmentation, like, yeah, benchmark, best practices, so forth.
Hello. I also have a complicated name. My name is Buğra Göker. I am working at PlayRaven as a live producer. Before joining PlayRaven, I used to work at Netmarble Games as a product manager. So right now, as a PlayRaven, we are focusing on our EVE Online game, EVE War of Ascension. So right now, we are trying to build our live ops structure and the teams.
Okay, great. So maybe before we kind of look into gold standards, which is kind of an interesting topic. I didn't make up this topic, by the way. Let's maybe, because I felt like this afternoon there were a lot of, I think maybe because it's a relatively new term, there are some people were talking about life services. Others were kind of, big teams with developers, part of the whole thing. Then at the very beginning, Space Ape was talking about like, okay, our life ops is like 4 people. That's what we do, and there is no development because we basically cut all that out. So maybe for each of you, like, just in a short one, what is life ops for you and what is it not?
Live ops, running a game as a service without developing any new content or actually even utilizing the development team. So I guess our view on live ops is quite actually close to Space Ape's view on it.
Okay.
So we usually work with external clients. That means that for us, live ops means taking over an existing project that the client doesn't want to invest the team anymore in. It doesn't mean that it's at the end of its life cycle. It just means that for them it makes more sense to put that certain team on a new project, hand it over to us so we can, increase their KPIs.
But do you then still also address kind of development, feature development, and these kind of things, or is that somehow, somewhere done separately?
It depends on the project and the client needs. In certain cases, you only do like events or promotions. In other cases or in other instances, you have to add certain features or more content, depending what are the KPIs that needs to be improved.
Okay, what about you?
Yeah, for me, it's increasing the overall performance of the game and lifespan without developing any other features. Basically, this.
Okay. So when you start, so at the beginning, very beginning of a game, what do you think is kind of the most important thing to plan for? So when you kind of start planning for live ops, what is kind of the one thing, out of your experiences with live ops, what is this one thing where you feel like, oh yeah, we should have really first time I did it wrong. We should have really addressed that right from the beginning. Is it around tools or processes, team? What is it?
Well, I would say maybe at least two things. One is that too often development teams start to focus on live ops very late. How I see operations, so different types of activations, campaigns, events, whatever you are running in-game or in the community, so basically outside the game. So all of those should be considered from the beginning, as it's so much easier to basically have the bigger picture, like where are you taking the sort of elder game or elder players when they have spent like hours and hours in the game, and not to jump into the challenge of shit, we should actually do some sort of events when you actually see the players churning. And I think the other thing, which I sort of already mentioned, was that too often many studios seem to think that live ops equals in-game events, which is partially true, but you could also do quite a bit of interesting activations and campaigns, like by customer support or sort of within the community, which basically drives the players to the game, so they drive the KPIs you want to improve, but you don't actually even have to do any content in the game.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, because again we're working with clients mostly, the most important thing is planning for the project takeover and syncing with the clients, and giving the team and the client team time to basically get in sync. The second one is to get to know the technical challenges of the game. There might be some things that you cannot plan for, like things that need to be upgraded that will take 2 sprints to do. So instead of providing better KPIs for a client, you end up just upgrading tools. And that's not something that you want to get surprised by.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's essential to know that what's your aim in the live ops. So what's your, you must have a realistic plan for it. So what kind of activities I want to run in soft launch, at global launch, or when the game shipped, what you're gonna do in the first 3 months. So after thinking about this, you need to think about if you have the required tools, or do you have any solid plans to move forward?
So you're in the middle of the EVE game, right? So you're
Yes.
in the middle of kind of the strategy around that. So
Yeah.
what are kind of the key things that you're currently looking at?
So right now we are in soft launch, so we have a chance to experiment in live ops as well. So each day we see new challenges. So, and also when we run the game, we see what kind of things we are missing now. So we can start building these beforehand, before the global launch. So this also gives us a chance to communicate with players easier. So we listen to them, what kind of things they need, and we start to build the game based on this.
Okay. So are you already kind of investing also heavily in tools and these kind of things?
Yes. Meanwhile, while we are developing the game features, we are also investing on the live ops features, tools, the missing live ops features as well. So two things are going at the same time, in the same direction.
Okay. So in terms of maybe as a rule of thumb, because we're looking for gold standards, I would say maybe best practices or some experiences. What would you say like is a good team size also for live ops? Because we were hearing earlier like 50 people, 40 people, 35 people teams sounded for me quite big. Then a presentation later it was actually broken down in like 3 parts, so 3 times 10. But what is your experience like a good team size to kind of be able to kind of manage live ops and get also something done?
Yeah, actually I witnessed teams of tons of people or small teams. It all depends how big you want to run your operation and what kind of skill set you have. For example, I was looking for the Asian companies. They have hundreds of people working on live ops. They are running the games for at least several years. For each live event, they are making live cinematics, animations, all these kind of things. So since this is a really big ocean, there are always something you want to experiment or go into more details. But if you have necessary tools and skill set, you can manage the game with small amount of people too.
Yeah, I guess it was exciting to follow the previous presentations as the size of the team actually varied like greatly. I'm a big believer of automating things and utilizing, well, as you said, like basically player feedback. That's super, super valuable. But also, of course, like quantitative data. So it's sort of a combo of that. And that basically leads to tiny live ops teams. But it's talking about standards and talking about like best practices. Well, it again, as I think you said, like it depends on the size of a company or size of the studio or the team. Like I consider, well, I don't see actually live ops as like a separate thing out there, but someone who is actually very heavily collaborating with me, like product and analytics and marketing and customer support. So it's sort of a amoeba.
Yeah,
but for me, like live ops core is just a couple of people.
Yeah, I'm gonna back that claim. Usually it's 5 to 7 people if you try to be as efficient as possible. Obviously you can go to 100 people, but yeah, I would rather be efficient than spend or throw just bodies at the problem.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, if you have like a really small team, because it is like a team effort. Somebody said earlier, it's like the marathon that actually starts. And culture is so important. So you have to kind of really, you have to do it together, right? So, and that usually only works really well with kind of a quite small team. I would agree. And kind of 100 people teams or something like that. That would suggest that in a half a year's time, everybody's going to be outsourcing live ops to some cheap markets or something like that. I'm not so sure that would actually really work. So, but I think this is something that definitely kind of the MMO space has done a lot with kind of big teams. So I was a long time ago CMO at Jagex, and we had back then like, I think, I don't know exactly, but I would say at least 150, 200 people in kind of just community management and kind of all that on site, which felt extraordinary. And then it's like, okay, we have all these bodies, maybe we can kind of outsource all of that. But yeah, I think the industry has also moved, and it's more now about how can we automate certain things to kind of actually really keep these teams efficient and small and kind of everybody knows everything a little bit, etc. Yeah, I kind of agree. But is there anything else that we could kind of learn from the MMO space, so to say? Because they've been preaching kind of the living games for a long time, and some of our games, I feel, in mobile at least, are kind of moving towards something similar-ish.
I would be interested to see what you have to say, since you're working on a mobile version of an MMO game.
Yeah, so The thing about the MMO games are they are really community-based, and they are really hardcore players, really dedicated players. So it is good to observe how they manage to their community. So that's why while we're in soft launch, we're always be in touch with the players. We are doing Ask Me Anything sessions, Discord sessions, or trying to get as much as feedback we can from players so we can maintain their expectations for the game. So it's, yeah, as I said, MMO games are always community driven. So we need to keep it on focus on that part.
So I don't have huge expertise from the MMO area, but I'm also sort of lining with like, well, maybe looking at the sort of perspective that what's basically lacking in many mobile games, and that's social. And I think that's something that actually MMOs will quite naturally like leverage and also utilized in order to engage the players over a longer period of time, and you're also creating different types of raids or events or what have you. So I think that's something that, well, Zynga is focusing on casual and sort of mid-core mobile games. And I would say that even with our muscles, like the social ideas are quite weak, so that could be something to be more heavily pushed to live ops type of activations, whatever they are.
Yeah, I think that MMOs are, by definition, they are very social, like truly social experiences. You play with your friends, you interact with your friends on a daily basis. And I would be really interested to see if us as an industry, in the mobile industry, we can do something similar with games on a long term. So how can we turn, you know, this thing about social that we are so proud of in mobile, how can you turn that into like real social interactions? I don't have an answer to that, if you're wondering.
Yeah, but it is certainly, I think the social aspect is certainly something. It's kind of the glue very often of a game. I mean, if you think of life ops, that is something for kind of the long term. It is much more about kind of, in my opinion at least, really like bringing something fresh and new. Also for somebody who has played the game for a year or 2 years or something like that, it is about that retention. And I would even argue that those players, no matter how you categorize them about this game, they are very, very core, so to say. I mean, they know everything about that. So I think, yeah, I think in mobile it's may sometimes be a bit more challenging to kind of get that social glue, also preferably inside the game and not somewhere on, like, I don't know, Facebook or Reddit or wherever. But I think that can actually also make quite a difference, right? Do you work with kind of games where you have like real, where you have a lot of chat and these kind of things, or is it like the social interactions very shallow?
Yeah, for our games, we have chats. Also, you can have some social features that you can attack players together, reinforce them, help them. So without the community, you can't actually reach a certain level. So you need to always be a part of community, help each others. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we have very strong like social features in like games like Zynga Poker or Words with Friends and such. But yeah, still, I don't think they leverage the aspect of social well enough in like different live operations.
Yeah, we usually do community management, but we usually do it through outside channels, so channels that are outside the game. So yeah, I would love to find a way to have better interaction inside the game that goes beyond just using chat. Again, I don't know how to do that, but obviously it's a good challenge to think of.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I heard somebody earlier today say, yeah, and then we hand it off to live ops, where I felt like, okay, this is maybe a bit degrading in a way, because for some that's when the journey actually really starts. And I think there were enough examples actually where you could see that the journey actually then starts. But in terms of like KPIs, what do you kind of look at? Is this more as you look at the specific game KPIs to kind of continue to improve that? Are there also like company KPIs that are important for kind of size of life ops and these kind of things? What are golden standards there?
Okay, actually, this is one of the questions where they actually might be a golden standard, as most often, like, yeah, it sort of depends. But, well, I would claim that majority follows engagement and retention. It's quite, yeah, sort of basic stuff, and then just, you know, digging deeper in terms of what are you actually doing? Like if you're doing a specific event, what are you going to trigger? Like what type of actions, what type of targets do you set? And by the way, that's something that you should always define. If you don't, from now on, you will. So, you know, figure out your hypothesis and actually targets when you start the different campaigns or event. It makes it so much easier to evaluate if you are on the right track or not, and you can always improve.
Yeah, as Sonia mentioned, we usually focus on engagement and retention metrics, but I believe in the long term, these kind of metrics also affect business KPIs as well, because our idea is to make our players more retained, more loyal, more happy. So in the end, we get more loyal users, so we can monetize them maybe in future. So it also depends what kind of campaigns you are running. For example, let's say that you are running an event to bring inactive players back to the game. So you want them to join back to the game. As for example, they didn't log in for 15 days, and you are making a campaign to retarget them from with user acquisition. So in that sense, the metrics we follow is retention metrics, also some of the UA-related marketing metrics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was asking this because I know, I mean, Nick didn't really have time to go into that, but because SpaceApe, for example, they basically look at it, they try to improve the revenue per life ops person. There's a really good track in the GDC Vault also about lean life ops. There they specifically say like, okay, they try to continuously increase the revenues per life ops person. So you can obviously also increase the team, but then equally you kind of have to also increase the overall revenues. But that obviously helps you focus very, very much on efficiency, to try to kind of squeeze that to the max. Beyond kind of obviously monitoring games, KPIs, and these kind of things, and looking at kind of the health of the game and where you can kind of improve and tweak things. Do you do a lot of A/B testing in life ops? Maybe you can share some experiences there, some best practices. So yeah, how much do you do that?
Well, again, as a large studio, we have our own tools to do A/B testing, and also what's basically I think crucial part of it is segmentation. So we segment players not only based on consumption or whether they are like lapsing or active or whatnot, but actually focusing more on motivations and different types of like behaviors. So that is also a key part of sort of narrowing down like who are we actually talking about as easily when you are looking at that massive, like big number of a user base. It does not take you that far if you just look at, you know, the user base as a whole. So, or even like per consumption, like how much they pay if they do. But for us, like segmentation and A/B testing goes like this. So they are two separate services, but they basically are in love. So, but yeah, we do. Well, again, it's a bit sad to always say that it depends a bit, but yeah, it actually depends a bit because it depends on, for example, for my product, it depends on me. I basically think like what would actually make sense for my game. So. But yeah, I'm a big believer of testing, different type of split testing. So I do it quite extensively, also for events. So because it's people are quite conservative. So especially if they have spent quite a bit of time in a game, so they basically expect certain things. And if we happen to change the certain things, yeah, we want to make sure that we don't piss off the players.
Yeah, we recently started making A/B tests for Eve, War of Ascension. But if I can give you some examples from my previous works, we used to. It's an important part of the live ops to increase efficiency. So we used to use A/B tests for almost all kind of in-game activities. For example, offering a package, timing of it, and the color of the button or discount rate, what kind of image we want to use, or content of the bundles. So we were A/B testing all of these to increase the efficiency to the maximum.
Yeah, obviously A/B testing, A/B/C testing, it's like the basic of live ops. We do a bunch of other stuff. We look at player progression, for example, see where players are stuck. And how would that impact the future of the game? For example, if you have a level where I don't know, you have 40% of people churning, let's say, and you decide to make the level much easier, you need to take into account the fact, okay, how will that impact future monetization of the players that were already in the game or already at that level, but they were monetizing better because the level was more difficult. So it's a bunch of stuff that you can look at, and it's part of what makes live ops quite fun to work with, because you work with numbers, and you can see quite easily the impact and the forecasting of each action that you take.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So what would you tell the audience? What is one of the biggest mistakes actually to make in live ops? Where do you think it sometimes can go awfully wrong?
Not knowing your audience, not understanding the weaknesses of the game, not paying attention to data. I think that's like a capital mistake for me.
Okay.
Yeah, there are so many possibilities to fail.
Okay, then one. Biggest.
Well, I think actually the biggest is that, you just start too late. So it should be like part of the full or total experience, not something you glue on top of when you see that players start to like get, done with all the existing content you have prepared.
Yeah, I would say that not knowing your audience and not knowing your product, you need to be really expert with your product, know its strengths, weaknesses, so you can work with it better. Yeah.
Maybe last question, and then we're going to open up to the floor. Do you see any kind of trends, or what are you expecting like in the future? I feel like it has become a little bit more popular. Let's put it that way. It almost has become a little bit of a buzzword, even though it's still a bit blurry for many. But what do you see as like the key trend, or where do you expect are we going to go with live ops?
I think it actually became more data-driven than it used to be, and also it became providing more personalized experiences to the players. Along with that, I think that brands and big companies also started to realize the importance of games. So I'm expecting to see more promotions in game with connected to live ops with other brands and companies. They want to reach different audiences, so we can see more stuff connected to live ops from different brands.
Very good comment. I agree. Also, well, I believe in social, I believe in local. Now that we have data, qualitative and quantitative, we can actually provide local events or experiences or campaigns, whatever that is, and automation. So there is loads of things to do in that area.
Thanks, I was going to say automation, but yes, I think that
Say
automation... AI. But automation as well, I think that's one of the biggest things that we can get way more efficient at. So again, we're going to see smaller and smaller teams, or teams that are more efficient in adding actual experiences to live ops projects, and put a lot of the day-to-day stuff, the routine stuff on automation.
Okay. So yeah, before we do Pekka Kucha, I think it's in the other one in 10 minutes. So some questions. You're going to get a microphone, and there's also a question. Yeah, thank you very much for now. And then some questions.
All right. Hi, thank you very much. Something you mentioned earlier in the metrics that were key to calculate is engagement. For you guys at your companies, how do you define engagement, and how do you make it a specific metric? Because everyone uses engagement as a collective of retention, number of session, but what is it exactly for you guys?
Yeah, so should I start with it depends on what are we looking at? But yeah, so we are looking at like the stickiness over time. We are looking at like session metrics. So again, it a bit depends on what are we actually looking at. But it's quite like basic things regarding like engagement.
Yeah, for me, for example, before making any kind of live events or live campaigns, we try to understand what would be the impact, and then we started defining the metrics we want to measure. For example, let's say that we want to have a huge PvP event, and we would like to see our results in increase in session times, more battles, more engagement among other players. So, yeah, it depends on what you run.
Great. It depends on the questions. Yeah.
That should be the title of the...
Yeah.
Hello, Jan Mańczyk from Jiva. I would like to ask if you have experience or do you see potential in live ops support of things outside the game. For example, real life events or support of forums or other communities. So if you tried some of those or you see potential in the future for those. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I already mentioned that, yes, I believe in. And we actually have very good results from events that are not actually happening within the game, but they are like activations that just trigger players to play more or play certain level or certain, with a certain goal. So we have nothing but very positive experiences. So that goes more towards the customer support type of or VIP type of activations. When you have big enough N, you can do also like more targeted activations outside the game for specific groups of players.
We call it community management, and you need to do it. You need to get people involved. As I said before, it's part of making the game a bit more social and making people feel part of the community. It also drives engagement as well.
Yeah, I also believe it's an important thing. Community events. For example, when we first announced the game, it was in the EVE Fun Fest in Vegas. So we had really good comments from the players when they first see the game in the event. So it also kinds of bond the players to the game and creates a solid community.
Well, I think that's a wrap. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Burhan, Sonia, and Mihai. Thank you. And yeah.